Welcome to the Gentleman Reviewer. So this is my first video that I've made for this page. This is going to be actually the first video that I've ever really put on YouTube. So bear with me while I learn all the ups and downs of reviewing products. My goal with this page is to review a variety of different products. Particularly, like today I'll be reviewing the Lamy Safari. But overall, I'd like to test fountain pens, of course, mechanical pencils. That's another thing that I tend to really like. Bags, things related to tea and coffee, just things that your average, everyday gentleman might use. So with that, let's begin. Remember to stay tuned, like and subscribe, share whatever you gotta do to see this as they come up. That would really help me get things going. Alright, so let's get going on the Lamy Safari. So, as I've said before multiple times, today I'll be reviewing the Lamy Safari. This one in particular is the 2017 special edition in Petrol. So I don't know how well you can see the color on that, but Petrol, which isn't very descriptive as far as the color goes, it's been described as a dark bluish green, maybe closer to a teal. I particularly really enjoy the color, but I mean, as you can see, I'm wearing blue. I like blue. One of the bags I'll review later is blue. It's my favorite color. I've liked it for years. And the ink that I'm actually using, the Iroshizuku Konpeki, is an awesome deep blue that I've really enjoyed. So you'll get to see that in the second part where I actually write with the pen. So this pen will run you about $30, brand new, right out of the box. That is a little high for someone just getting into the fountain pen world. This does tend to be a pen that is maybe a step closer to a little bit more premium pens. It's not always the first pen that people use because of the price. And then on top of that, right out of the box, it only comes with a Lamy blue ink cartridge. And it only comes with one. I don't like the cartridges. I always buy converters for my pens. And again, that's because I like stuff like the Pilot ink or diamine ink. And it gives you a wider variety of what you can do with the pens rather than a cartridge. So again, based on that, the cartridge will run you about $6, maybe $7 US from Goulet Pens or Amazon. And so that, you're running $40 just to get going with a fountain pen, and people don't always like that. So I definitely understand. Most people start off with the Pilot Metropolitan or a Jinhao, just because those are a lot cheaper. And while the converter costs about the same, maybe a little bit more, it's a little more, like you still almost half the price of a Lamy Safari. So this pen was designed in the 1980s, or actually right at 1980, and the design hasn't really changed very much since then. Lamy is based off of the Bauhaus principle. I hope I'm saying that right. I really could be saying that wrong. I'm sorry if I am. And that just states that form follows function. So they wanted to design a pen that works well, first of all, so that way you've got a reliable start, reliable ink flow, it writes well. And then a pen that, you design what it looks like around that. I really think they nailed it with this pen. It's not flashy. It's pretty simple. The clip is what people tend to really notice about these pens, and it tends to stand out in the fountain pen community. It makes it a little bit more of an iconic pen. So yeah, but since then they've made it with ABS injection molded plastic. I don't know how familiar people are with injection molding, but I won't be able to explain it very well. If you go look at Lamy let Brian Goulet from Goulet Pens tour their facility, and he did a great review of it, but they show you a little bit how the Safari is made. It's a brief little blip, but you get a good idea of what injection molding really is. So that makes it, given that the pen is plastic, the only thing metal that I can think of on this pen, or steel, sorry, is the nib. But to get back to the body, it makes it really light. That is something that I don't particularly like about this pen. I do prefer heavier pens. I have a Nemesine Fission that I really like the weight on it. I do tend to get a little fatigued when I'm writing with it, which is a pro to a lighter pen. I just like the weight. I have a Rotring 600. Again, I hope I'm saying that brand right. It's a metal mechanical pencil. I really like the weight of that one as well. Those are just two pens that you might have in your arsenal, just so you can kind of compare for where I'm coming from as far as weight. Another thing that I like about this that tends to put people one way or another is the triangular grip. That was designed to where people can hold it with the standard tripod grip. I don't hold it like that. You'll see a little bit better how I hold pens when I get to the writing part of this review. I don't know how well you can see it, but I tend to like close-fisted almost. I hold it. I mentioned in my written part of the review that I hold it a little bit like a monster. Not really a monster, but that's just how I've always held pens my whole life. I've tried to get the standard tripod grip, especially with this pen. I just can't do it. I don't write well with it. I don't write very quickly. My already bad handwriting, which again you'll see later, tends to get worse. So let's get a little bit farther into this pen. Before I take it apart, the nib material is made of steel. Some people mention that it writes a little bit scratchy, because I asked on the subreddit r/fountain pens, just because I really like this pen and I didn't want to do a fully biased review in the positives. And they mentioned that it does tend to write a little bit scratchy. One thing that could be going on with that is they're putting too much pressure when they're writing, just based on that. You know, we're used to writing with like ballpoint pens like the Pilot G2, which I compare at least the writing with to later in the written part. And you have to make those pens write. A well-tuned fountain pen will actually write under its own weight. So again, the Lamy is pretty light, doesn't often like to write under its own weight, but it will. At least in my experience, it doesn't often write in its own weight. All right, so now let's go inside a little bit. So as you can see, I've got it pretty full. Maybe it will settle a little bit there and you can see, but it's filled up to about there. I filled it up not too long ago, and I haven't used it a heck of a lot since I filled it up. This converter in particular is a Z24. Now you can use the Z24 or the Z28. Again, both of those will run you about $6. And after doing a little digging around on the interweb, I found that they're the exact same converter. The Z28 is just the updated name. I don't know why they changed the name, but they did. So the Z28 and the Z24 are exactly the same. The reason you want those is I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a groove right there, which this has a post that it fits into. The converter has a post on it that will guide it into those grooves right there. And I think that helps while you're filling it. The YouTube channel Stuff and Things mentions that they use the Z26. It's the exact, from what I've seen, it's very, very similar, and it will fit in these pens, but it doesn't have those posts. So it's more of a friction fit, like you'll see on the Pilot Metropolitan, or even my Nemesine pens that I have that I'll do a review on later. One thing that I've noticed with some of the friction fit pens is when you're filling it, and I haven't seen this on the Pilot Metropolitan at all, and I've had 4 of those. My wife has 2. I've gone through 2, or I have 2. I dropped one of them on the nib, and I'll show you guys that when I review that pen. But when you're filling the ink with some of the friction fit pens, I've noticed that it tends to spin a little bit. The converter does, and these posts will keep it from spinning and make it super easy to fill and get a good fill on it because it's not sitting there spinning and it's snug. So that's the construction of the pen. Near the end of the video for the second part, I'll show you how you're supposed to take the nib off. I won't actually take the nib off, mostly because, as you saw, this is full of ink, and I would prefer not to get ink all over my table and everything. So let's see, let me just double check my notes and make sure I hit everything. To go back to construction a little bit, I'm sure you've noticed that there is an ink window on this pen. I don't know if you can see through it, but it'll give you a good glimpse of how much ink you have left in the pen. I don't tend to use it. I'll still unscrew the body, and that's just what I prefer. As I mentioned earlier, so I really like this pen. This is one that I would recommend to anyone getting into fountain pens, whether they've been in the world for a while, they're brand new, it just writes consistently well. But I wanted to get a more more thorough review for you guys. So I asked on the subreddit again, r/fountain pens, what they thought about the Lamy Safari. One person, and this was my favorite comment, mentioned that it's like an overpriced Lego. It's not a pretty pen. I like the way it looks. It's, like I said before, it's kind of industrial, and I don't think it looks like a Lego, but I see where they get that from. It's not uber pretty like you would find on some other pens. But a lot of the people agreed with some of the things that I've said here. It writes well, starts pretty consistently. One person mentioned that they've neglected their pen for as long as a month, left it sitting around while it was filled. And if you do that with some fountain pens, it'll get all dry in the nib and you'll have to soak it to clean it. I did that with a Cross fountain pen. That was my first fountain pen ever. I bought a medium nib, and you'll see later that I write very small, and I hated it because it was medium. My writing turned into just a blotch across the page, and so I stopped using it. Left an ink cartridge in there, and when I put another one in, it wouldn't work. So I was able to clean it by soaking it in water. But this person mentioned that they sometimes neglect their Lamy Safari, and even after sitting around for a month or so, it'll still start reliably well. I've left mine alone maybe a week, maybe a little bit more, no more than 2 weeks, and still find that it starts well. Again, some people, like I've said earlier, the grip tends to be make it or break it for people because it is triangular, and depending on how you grip your pen, you might need a round grip. I've seen people that fit it through their fingers like that, and you might actually be able to make the Lamy work like that pretty well. But I don't know. I don't write like that. I'm not going to try to write like that because I don't know how people do that. But overall, a vast majority of people really like this pen. It is definitely something that I would recommend for someone starting out, someone who's been around for a while. It's just a good, solid pen. A little bit higher on the price point for someone just starting. But if you're willing to invest that little bit of extra money, I think you'll get a pen that you'll be using for a while. Something that will stand the test of time. It's a design that has already stood the test of time. And when you're researching fountain pens, you'll come across it time and time again as one of the best beginner, entry-level, under $100 fountain pens that you can get. All right, so let's go to the written part of this where I let you see my crappy handwriting and how this pen works on a variety of different papers. So I'm not fancy and I don't have any of the Rhodia pads of paper. One person mentioned that they'd really like to see how fountain pens work on stuff that your average college student might have. Just cheap paper, because again, most people are using Rhodia, Lecterm, I think I'm saying that right, paper, and that's really nice paper, very well made for fountain pens. Fountain pens tend to write very well on it. So I've got, for example, this one that I've got here. Let me pull this off of it. So this pad I've got here, which I'll write on first, just for example of what I'll be using, it's a no brand pad that I got at Walmart actually a couple years ago. So let's see how they write on these, and we'll go from there. See you on the other side. All right, everybody, welcome back. So again, I'm using the Lamy Safari. I don't think I mentioned what size nib I have earlier, but I've got the extra fine. I don't know how well you can see that because I'm filming on my phone because I'm brand new to this and I don't have a nice camera yet. So let's get going on this. This is the pad of paper that I mentioned earlier. You can see up here that it's no brand name or anything like that. I think I got it in a pack of 8 at Walmart. So very, very cheap paper. It's probably what your average college student would use. I didn't write on these through college. I'll get to some paper that I used in college and grad school a little bit later. But this is cheap. This is something that your average everyday person would be able to use, especially if they're not wanting to put down a lot of money just on the paper that they use. So let's get going on some writing. So let's see, I have terrible handwriting. I apologize. It's something that I'm trying to work on. So this is the Lamy Safari. I think you guys can kind of see my grip that I said but again, it works well with the way the fountain pen writes. So this is the Lamy Safari 2017 Special Edition in Petrol. So again, I don't know how well you guys can see the color, but I really like it. Again, I'm using the Pilot Iroshizuku Konpeki, which, as you can see, is a very, very awesome blue. Like I said, I really like blue. So as you can see, even on this cheap paper, and again, I am using an extra fine nib because I do tend to write fairly small. It's not feathering at all. I don't notice any feathering. Let's see. You know, it's working well for that. Even if I were to, let's do this guy. Go like that. Doesn't tend to smudge very much on this paper. And just before I get going on to other types of paper, so the Pilot G2 in 05, just for comparison, one thing that I always wanted to see because I write so small is how thick the nibs are for writing, because I don't want to buy a fountain pen that I'm not going to use. So this is a pen that I think most people have. So this is the Pilot G2 in 05. So as you can see, the writing on the Pilot is a little bit thinner than the extra fine on the Lamy. This is a German extra fine, so it is going to be a little bit bigger than, say, your Pilot Metropolitan, which writes very, very thin. And I really like their nib. I'll probably review that one next, just so you guys can have some context right back to back for the fountain pens. But again, so this is just some cheap pad of paper that I've gotten over time. Let's see. So this is I don't know how well you can see it, composition book that you can buy around the school year for 50 cents at Walmart. Very, very affordable paper. So let's see how the fountain pen works on this. So this is what I tend to keep my notes in for fountain pens or any type of review that I'm doing. It's a bad start. I've had the pen open a lot, so it is getting a little dry. So the Lamy Safari. Sorry for the shadows. Again, I don't really have a lot of stuff to make very good filming yet. So the Lamy Safari 2017 Special Edition. Again, pretty much no feathering on this one either. A little bit blurry over here, but maybe that's just because of the way it's focusing, because I don't notice that when I'm not looking at the camera. So let's do this smudge test again. A little bit more than the last one, but not a lot. So again, I wrote a little bit quicker there. Again, pardon my crappy handwriting, but even then the pen's keeping up well. Not a lot of skipping, pretty much a little bit there, but not a lot at all. Again, I've had this pen open a little bit more than I usually do, so it could be drying out a little bit. All right, let's move on to some other paper. So this is, I don't even know what brand that is, but this is what you'll probably see a lot of students using when they are in school. Very, very cheap paper. I think you can get these for 25 cents around the school year. All right, so again, almost no feathering. I'm noticing a little bit right there. Yeah, not much at all. Let's try this again. Oh, actually, almost no smudging there. Yeah, almost no smudging. And this is really cheap paper. So I'm actually surprised at how well this one is doing on this nib. Again, it's an extra fine. If you have some of the thicker nibs, like a medium or a broad, they do tend to write a little more wet, and that will lead to some feathering. All right, last but not least, I've got just some standard printer paper that I got probably at Walmart again. So no feathering there. Lamy Safari, I'm not going to write the whole thing out. You can see there's almost no feathering on this paper either. This is just the paper that you can buy in a pack at Walmart of like 250 sheets of printer paper. One last thing that I wanted to show you guys So I have a day minder that I get from work for my planner. And I just wanted to, that is one place that I've noticed that it will tend to feather a little bit more. So this is just the day minder at a glance. Let me show you that, because this is a place that I have noticed some feathering. So you can see there, even just on that, it's a little bit thicker. The paper is pretty thin, not very glossy like some of the other papers that I've written on. I'm not going to write more, but you can see it's already feathering a little bit more. And if I were to do that, it tends to soak it up, which you see a lot on paper that feathers, but I did that for the first shot of this video that I'm probably not gonna use, but you can see it's bleeding through the paper, which makes it really hard to use on a planner. And I'm kind of bummed by that, actually, because I like using fountain pens, and I don't, I wanted to use it. One thing that I wanted to bring up, actually, that I didn't mention on the first part, one downside to the injection molded plastic is, I think you can see it right there, I did scratch it. It's just cosmetic. I don't even think you can't even really feel it. But I think that has to do with how I carry this pen, rather than any problem with it, with the design. It tends to be pretty durable, great for pocket, like everyday carry in your pocket, maybe if you have got keys in there, whereas you don't want to do that with the All-Star, that's metal, which will scratch up with the keys. But with these day minders, they've got these metal rings on there, and you can even see when I this was all smashed up because of the way I carry it. Because I've also got I don't know if I have notes on here, but I use this for work. I've got an A4 size notepad in this. I forgot what they're called, but yeah. So it gets really, really tight in here, and you can see I tend to carry it like that. When I close it, it gets pretty full. So, but that's my review of the Lamy Safari. One last thing before I go, I did say I'd show you how to change the nib, which I'm not gonna do, but I'll try to remember to attach a link to the video that Lamy made to change these, if you're ever interested in doing that. But you take the pen like this, and you'll actually use the cap, and then you'll pull, and that will pull the nib off. I don't want to do it because, again, it's full of ink, and I really don't want to end up with a big mess of ink everywhere. All right, everybody. So thanks again. This is the Lamy Safari in Petrol 2017 Special Edition. Just for a summary, I really enjoy this pen. I like the way it writes. I like the way it feels, even with my bit of a monster grip. I do enjoy it. I would highly recommend this to someone brand new to fountain pens or someone who's been using fountain pens for a while. But yeah, please like, comment, share. Check out my social media pages. I'm on Twitter. What else am I on? Facebook. Just all the main social media sites, Instagram, Snapchat. I haven't really figured out how to use Snapchat yet, but especially for a blog. But yeah, thanks again for popping by. Stay tuned for some other reviews that I'll be doing in the future. Thanks again.